Thanks for coming out. I'm Lynn Langett, and this is STG203, Simplified Management and Backup for Amazon S3, Amazon Glacier with CloudBerry. So here we go. So we're going to have three aspects to our discussion in this session. The first is going to be best practices around the services that I assume the majority of the people in here already use, know, and love, which is S3 and also Glacier. What I find with my customers as an enterprise architect is every customer uses S3, and more customers are beginning to use or increasing to use Glacier. So I'm assuming the audience is the same composition. We're going to look at the processes around storage and backup with these services, file storage and backup. And we're going to look at both Amazon best practices and the use of CloudBerry Lab tools in the application of these practices. Lots of demos in this session, because I know you just came out of the keynote, you got lots of PowerPoint, so a little PowerPoint, lots of demos. Is that good? You guys like that? Demos are good, right? So there are more storage services than just S3 and Glacier, and although I will not cover those other services, I encourage you as you are augmenting, planning, and improving your storage solutions on the Amazon cloud to consider all the different storage services because they all meet different enterprise purposes. So if you're not familiar, of course you have S3 for the core storage, you have Glacier for the archival storage, but there is a service in preview called EFS, Elastic File System, which is a LAN type of a storage. You have a gateway, and then you have CloudFront for your CDN if you have those needs. So one situation I run into with my customers frequently is they'll just put everything into S3 because it's simple and they won't make use of the variety of services. And then of course, I've been at reInvent a few times, so people who've been at reInvent a few times, we tend to watch the keynote from the comfort of our hotel rooms because if you went to the keynote, you know what I'm talking about. So I saw the big new storage device as well, which was pretty interesting. What's that called? Snowflake? Snowball, sorry, Snowball. So interesting. All right, so best practices. With all these services, how do you determine how best to use the core services? So general Amazon best practices, which I find with my customers are really best implemented starting with the storage services because they're simplest, are these set of services that I've shown up here. The very first one is just resource tagging. So I'll just briefly demonstrate that on the console in just a minute, but the concept is that you associate metadata to sets of services so that you can manage them in groups. It's just a really simple concept, but again, as I go out there and I work with customers moving on to the cloud, I'm moving from POCs into production, and a lot of these little best practices I just don't see happening consistently across any services, and storage is a really easy way to start that. So object tagging and resource groups. Basically, you can think of putting additional information around, in this case, S3 buckets, and then grouping them together. So you can just manage them as a group. The next thing is understanding your billing and costing. The cost of the services that we're talking about specifically here, S3 and Glacier, are very different. And I find that customers will sometimes not understand the cost differences of both storing and retrieving. And so using the tools that Amazon provides in order to understand and manage your costs, namely the cost in Billing Explorer and the budgets, is a really great process to begin when you're working with S3 and other core services. Now the biggest thing that I see around S3 that I'm really going to emphasize and is really beautifully integrated into the CloudBerry tools is the improper use of IAMs. I mean, many of us, and I won't make you raise your hand, are still using our root IAM account, even though Amazon is giving us all these dire warnings. You know, really, this is the equivalent of using your domain admin for all your logins. And it's a difficult habit to break because when we're working with these POCs, it's just really easy to use the root account. But this is the #1 thing I see done incorrectly in the enterprise. So I'm going to spend quite a bit of time showing best practices around IAM users, policies, and showing the integration into the CloudBerry tools, which makes appropriate implementation of this really, really easy with S3 and Glacier. And then I'm just going to mention CloudTrail. CloudTrail is just something that is an automatic thing. You should just turn it on. You have logging. This is your, your enterprise information. it's just something, again, I don't see customers doing. So I'm just trying to share best practices from the real world. So let's switch over. Now I have this bad habit of not switching, so you are totally allowed if I say let's switch over and I don't push the button to just remind me, because I had a double espresso, but it might wear off at some point. So here we are in the Amazon console, and the first thing I want to point out is I'm logged on as an IAM user. So if this is completely new to you, and I realize some of the customers attending this show might not yet be on the Amazon cloud, so this is new stuff. This is a non-root user. So there is a capability inside the Amazon console to create users, groups, and then associate permissions, which are policies, with these users and groups. And when you are implementing really any solution, but in the context of this discussion, storage, you want to plan for who has what type of permission on what type of storage capabilities. So you can see that I'm using a demo user, and if I wanted to take a look inside of here, I would go into my account, and if you've not seen this before, you go into users, and it's a typical Amazon console, so you can create a new user. And it is a pretty easy to use console, but as I'm going to point out, when you create a user inside of here, then the process of assigning the appropriate permissions, you are presented with all the permissions of all Amazon services, and can be a little bit overwhelming. So one of the things I really like about tools like the CloudBerry tools is, as you'll see, they associate the specific permissions that are available for S3 and Glacier and make it a lot easier for you to be able to create appropriately permissioned users and groups. So inside of here, in addition to this, we have, of course, our core services. So if you've not seen S3, I'm just going to go real quick because I assume most of you have. The concept is buckets. So this is the idea of a drive, basically. So it's a file system in the sky, and you create a bucket, and then you give the bucket a name, you put it in a region, and then you set properties to it. And you can do all these activities, of course, from the command line or also from SDK. I'm just using GUI tools because it's a little bit faster and better to look at in a demo. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel, and I'm going to go inside of a bucket here. And you can see that inside the bucket, I just have files, and I can do actions on the files. And again, there's a lot of the interface that's exposed through the console for S3. However, this is not the case when you go to Glacier. So S3 is your warm storage. So you put files in, you take files out, you just work with it back and forth. Glacier is your archival or cold storage. You put files in almost for free, but it takes a lot longer because you're sending it to an archival location. And then you incur your fees and charges when you pull files out. And also, you are pulling out of an archive location, so it's not a hot type of a storage. So in addition to that, one of the things that's interesting about this is the interface here is not as rich as the S3 interface. In the world of Glacier, you have vaults. But if I go into my vault, unlike in S3 where I was looking at my bucket, I can't really look at what's in there. So that's when tools like CloudBerry's tool come into play, because as you'll see in a second, you're going to want to work with these services in an integrated fashion. You're going to want to be able to see what's in your vault and see what's in your bucket and be able to work with them back and forth. So working with a tool that is designed for that is really a little bit more intuitive than using the console. So let me go back. And I'm back, okay. So a typical request that I'm getting is I need to have a tool or a method of managing the archiving of my information from S3 into Glacier. Because as there's more and more information to be had and we are moving more and more information to S3, we actually are going to be now making a strategy where we're archiving our information because we just don't need all that information in warm storage. We want to save money, basically. So Glacier has a concept of jobs and inventories. And then as I was saying, where you want to manage the costs is on retrieval. Putting in is almost nothing. It's just ridiculously cheap. But you want to manage retrieval. Now, you can do this through the console, but again, when I get into the tools, you'll see that tools like CloudBerry help you to understand the costs associated so that you can have predictable costs when you're working with the services. All right, so CloudBerry has a number of tools. The first tool that they have is called Explorer Pro. And as you'll see in a second, what Explorer Pro does is it basically supplants what I showed you in the console with a much richer set of interface. Now I'm going to show you the Windows version, so you'll see that it looks very much like Windows Explorer, which is by design, so that it's very, very usable by customers who are familiar with the Windows interface. So in addition to drag and drop and a lot of other features that you're used to in the Windows Explorer, you're going to see, as I get into the demo, rich integration across the Amazon stack. Everything from S3 bucket properties to IAM users to integration with other services like CloudFront. So rather than talking about it, I'm going to show it to you. All right, so first of all, where do you get it? So if you go to the CloudBerry site here, you can see that we're going to first look at CloudBerry Explorer, and we're going to look at the version for Amazon. I'll point out, some of you are probably PowerShell wizards here. There is a PowerShell version of this. So if you prefer command line, and it's nicely integrates, but again, I don't like showing walls of code, particularly after a 2-hour keynote, so I'm not showing it. If you want it, you can get it, okay? I'm going to show you the Explorer version. So I'm going to go ahead and open it, and I've already installed it. And I'll give you a minute just to look at the interface, because it's kind of beautiful if you've never seen it before. And when I show this to customers, the facial expression I usually get is this. The cloud, but it doesn't look like the cloud. Because, you know, let's be honest here. Some of us here have embraced the cloud, we're all in, but some of us are still hesitant, and some of us are being dragged kicking and screaming. And so anything that is familiar is going to make us a little bit happier. So how does this thing work? What am I looking at? On the left side, I have my computer. And on the right side, I have my S3 service. So first, you have to know how to connect once you download this thing. So I'll show you how it works. So you can see over on File, we can connect to S3, Glacier. If you're in China, you can connect to the China cloud. You can also work with FTP. So I've already set up my connections, so I'm just going to go ahead and edit my accounts, and so you can see what they look like. So inside of here, I'm connecting to both S3 and Glacier. And if I edit this, you can see that I'm using my access and secret keys, and I have a non-root account, and I can test it. Notice here we already start with the IAM integration, which I think is one of the strongest features of this product, because you need to get your permissions right around your data and your file security. And again, I see it done wrong so often. You can optionally use an AWS IAM role policy. Now, for extra credit, if I had something to give the audience, I would throw out a t-shirt, but I don't, so I'll just smile at you. How many of you, and you don't have to raise your hand, but just sort of think about this, first of all, know what MFA is, and second, are using MFA? Oh, some people they want to raise their hand. Yay, okay, great. So again, you have lots of things to learn. I'm going to tell you, Google Authenticator is what I use. Seriously, people, use MFA, multi-factor authentication. This is your enterprise data that we're talking about. I didn't enable it for this demo, but the idea is an external device which is also verified as part of the authentication. And CloudBerry supports that here. You can specify MFA serial number, okay? So once you've got an account, then you can just party on the data. So now just to kind of give you a contrast so you can see, if you look at the buckets inside of here, in my S3 account, you can see it starts AWS laying it. I have some demo for Linda, thing like that. So then I go over here, and I go inside of here, and basically, I've got the same thing but better, rather than what's in my S3 account, because I have more capability to interact with it. So see, AWS laying it, so on and so forth. So now, if I go inside of CloudBerry, first thing that I would probably want to do is make a bucket. So here I can make a bucket, and I'll call it reinvent, and I'll call it today. I don't know, whatever. Notice I can make my bucket in various locations, and then I say OK. And then it is just that fast, live on the cloud. Then inside of there, I can make a folder and test for reinvent. And this is almost boring, it's so easy. That's great, isn't it? When was the last time you saw a cloud tool that was almost boring, it was so easy? Usually you're looking at it going, I think I understand, right? So inside of here, how do you move data around? Well, you wouldn't even have to, I wouldn't probably have to tell you. You drag it. Okay? So in terms of driving adoption, the Explorer has this beautifully simple interface that I find my customers are really, really happy about. It's one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you guys about it. Now, inside of here, it's not just a drag and drop interface. If I go back up to the top and I go to my bucket that I set up wherever it is, here it is, I can right-click on it, and this is the integration that CloudBerry has done with all of the various services. So I can set bucket policies, I can set lifecycle, I can set encryption, I can make the content into a website, basically any of the S3 policies, just by right-clicking on the bucket. Very, very simple. So in addition to this, what I can do is I can work with some of the other tools inside of the Explorer. So I can add sync folders. And so I can synchronize, just like we do with the, basically I call them the personal tools that we integrate with the cloud, the Dropboxes of the world, but I can do this for my enterprise data in a way that's familiar to my users. So it's very, very simple. So beyond that, I can also do a folder compare. So here I am in my local files, and I've just dragged one folder. So if I click folder compare, let me make sure I'm in the right location. And go here and set my location. Go back. And go here and do my compare. Oh, I need to put my bucket. There we go. And then I'm going to compare between the two of them. And there you can see, because I only dragged one folder, one file over, I need to put these files in order to match. So a comparison is really just that easy. So are you getting a sense of the ease of the drag and drop and the integration? Nice, right? So in addition to that, I mentioned the IAM capabilities. So let me show you a little bit about that as well. If I go into the Access Manager for IAMs, and I go into the Access Manager here, now I'm using a non-root account, but I'm using an account with high level of permissions to start. So inside of here, I can list all of my users. This is a non-root, but it's a pretty powerful account. Now from a practical point, what I might want to do is I might want to create an account to work with, a subset of my S3 buckets. So in order to do that, I can just click New User, and I can say, Junior User or something. And then I can add it to an existing group that has permissions, or I can, make whatever permissions that I want. And then once I'm inside of here, I can also create access keys. So again, very, very elegant integration. So now I have access keys associated with this user for whom I'm going to assign a lower level of permission, all inside of this tool. It makes the management of appropriate IAM permissions really elegant and simple, and I like that a lot. All right. So let me switch back and make sure I showed you everything. Oh, let's see. There we go. Okay, so I showed you the drag and drop. I showed you the folder compare. I mentioned that the S3 properties are supported, so I didn't actually show you them, but compression is supported, encryption is supported, website, basically everything that's a bucket property. I showed you the beginning of the IAM Manager. I showed you creating a user and generating keys. I didn't show you setting up the appropriate permission. I'll do that in just a second. And there is also the ability here to control costs through upload rules. You can do multi-part upload and multi-thread upload. And I should actually show you that because it's kind of neat. So inside of here, let me go out of here, and let me go over to my bucket, and go back over here to the new bucket that I made, and go to upload rules. Here we go. And I can create an upload rule, and here I can set compression, encryption, which can save you a lot of money, or meet your security requirements, and then I can associate it to specific filters within the bucket. So really a powerful capability. Now in terms of permissioning, let me go back and show you the policy wizard. Again, I love this because it makes it really, really easy for you to appropriately permission. You remember we created this new bucket, reinvent today. So if we say from this particular account, and then we can either create a user, or we can create multiple users, or select a group. And I'm going to actually just create another user. So I'll say test for bucket. And next. Notice I have the ability here in plain English to set the permissions correctly. I think this screen is really, really powerful and useful. So I can say grant full control to selected buckets only, and then I can associate full control to the bucket that I created, for example. And then I can select it once I can find it. There it is. And here it is written in AWS policy language, which I don't know about you, I program in, 15 programming languages, and if I can have something that'll implement something that is a little bit obscure, I will use the GUI more often than not. And this is how you apply that policy, and then you're good to go. So pretty powerful tool. I find that I use it on a pretty regular basis. Like I said, it's also integrated with CloudFront. Other capabilities in here is you can do a security assessment. So this will actually assess where you'll have non-standard security policies. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't include Glacier, because we were working with S3. And one of the great things about this product is you can just simply switch to Glacier, and very much unlike the AWS console, you can see inside of your Glacier buckets, or Glacier vaults, and you can just move items by dragging and dropping, which makes it really, really easy to work with it. Now, in addition to this, you might want to set your archival policy so that your data is moved automatically. So you can do that by just right-clicking, and you can set in here your bucket lifecycle. And you set your bucket lifecycle rules so that you can then move data of a certain type, certain size, certain age, so on and so forth, automatically into Glacier. Very, very useful capability. All right. All right, lots of stuff in there. Tool I use all the time. But that is not the only tool we're going to talk about. Okay, so we talked about that, talked about that, talked about that. All right, so the next tool, you'll like this one, and I'll tell you right up front. You know why you're going to like it? Because you're all getting it for free just for showing up, okay? So now you pay attention. This is a similar tool to what we just looked at, but it's called CloudBerry Drive. And indeed, you're going to get license keys for attending this session for the product. So it's a version of CloudBerry Explorer, but it is a drive mapper. So I'll show you how it works. There's also something called CloudBerry Box, but let's see, let me go back over here. All right, so how this guy works is it's drive mapper. It's super useful. So here's your drive mapper, and you just add a drive, and then you're going to say demo, and then I've downloaded it and then authenticated to it. And so if I pick my new bucket here, so here it is, I say OK, and notice it supports encryption, which is super cool. And I can mount this as a drive and say OK, and then go inside of here, and I can view my mapped drive. And inside of here, you can see I've got test for reinvent, see it? And then I've got it right here. No, that's the wrong one, sorry. I gotta go over here and go on here to where I'm over here, I think, yeah. Over here, there it is. Okay, and now if I go inside of here, and I'm in S3, and I don't know, make a file or something. Let me just make a copy of this. So copy and paste. Now you kind of grok what I'm doing here? I'm on a drive mapper to an Amazon S3 bucket on a, drive map thing here. And then I go inside of here and I refresh. And there it is. Kind of cool, huh? So I think that this tool, the drive mapper, is probably something more of you guys in the audience will be using. Because, I assume that you are, network admins and DBAs and that kind of stuff, and this would be your business analysts. So pretty neat little tool. I use it all the time. One thing I want to just tell you, something I used it for actually for another project at reInvent, is in addition to associating to a permissioned drive, it also can associate to a public data. So I'm doing another session here, and this is a public bucket, and I thought it was really super convenient and cool that I could investigate public buckets, so Amazon S3 buckets that were publicly available inside of this tool and just working with the data. It was just super useful. So, all right, let me close out of here and switch back over. All right, so y'all get that. You guys gonna use it? What do you think? Yeah, are you awake? Everyone's like, the keynote was so long. All right, well, here's a pretty slide. So I can't claim to have taken this image. The image was in some magazine. It's so beautiful, though, isn't it? It's New York. And one of the reasons I use this slide to represent backup is because when I think of New York, I think of just so much data. And it might be silly, but I just think of so many people and so much data. And, how much data are we individually generating? That's just something to think about. My ring is a smart ring. Let's see if I can make it go here. It's Bluetooth connected if it's not sleeping. And my ring has an IP address, right? So, again, I sometimes wear a necklace with an IP address and sometimes a bracelet, and it's just so interesting. So anyway, as we are generating so much more data, we have to not only, of course, store it correctly and permission our users correctly, but we have to back it up correctly. And our backups and our restores have to work. So core processes that, unfortunately, I still see done wrong. So the first thing is multi-availability zone. Okay, sorry, reality is cloud goes down. I don't work for Amazon, I don't work for Google, I don't work for Microsoft, I work for myself. So I can tell you, all three clouds go down. They go down sometimes. So you must pay for redundancy. Okay, it's the way it is, people. And I don't find customers that want to do that. And they call me when they lose stuff. So don't be those customers, okay? Offsite local backup is also still important. Because you're doing that, data synchronization is important, and trial, restore, disaster recovery drills are super important. Now you can all look at your shoes when I say how many of you have done a trial DR drill with your cloud data across multiple zones. Look at your shoes now. Okay. It's okay, we're in it together, okay? But seriously, this is the different world that we're in where we have multi-AZ needs, and we need to have backups that work in our cloud or multiple clouds. And again, CloudBerry has something very powerful for us to use here. And that's CloudBerry Backup. So let me show you how it works. Go out of here and go over to CloudBerry Backup. So it's really awesome that I don't work for any one vendor, because I can proudly show you that, which is a great aspect of CloudBerry Backup. Because you might use multi-AZ, but you might use more than one vendor. And CloudBerry Backup supports it in a really elegant and beautiful way. It connects, it allows you to easily connect in the same way as I showed you with Explorer to multiple cloud vendors or multiple, connections within the same vendor if you want to use different locations. So you probably know how to do this. If I went in and I edited my accounts, it looks exactly the same as CloudBerry Explorer, and that's by design. One of the best practices that I advocate for using tools around storage and backup is take this path, like CloudBerry. CloudBerry is a great reference example, where you use an augmented Explorer to become comfortable with the tooling, because it's just a utility operation, basically. And then once you're completely comfortable, including the IAMs and the versioning and the policies, then move over to CloudBerry Backup because the interface will be super simple for you to use. So you can see inside of here that I've got access to a bucket. Now notice, in addition to this, I have the ability to enable cost estimates. This is what I was talking about in terms of cost management. It's got integration with Amazon services so that you can, for example, turn on a switch to prevent backup if it costs more than a specified threshold. This is important stuff, you guys. How many of you, and again, you don't have to raise your hand, have received cloud bills that were bigger than you thought they'd be? Lots of us, right? So we need these tools to help us to manage our costs. Same thing for Glacier. Inside of here, you've got cost estimates. Super important, okay? So how does this work? Well, it's going to be very, very familiar. So inside of here, you click on Files, and then next, it's a wizard-driven backup job creation tool. And then you select your account. So we'll just go with the original one here, and click Next. And then we've got a backup plan name. Notice we can use AWS Import-Export to make the initial backup, so nice integration with other services. You have different modes. By default, we're in Advanced. We have the ability to use block level backup, and we can force using volume shadow copy service as well. Typical enterprise needs. Implemented very nicely in a easy-to-use GUI. Good stuff. So we can say what we want to back up. So inside of here, we want to go and back up my little demo section here. We have the typical filters where you can set, back up only certain file sizes, skip, so on and so forth. And then we have the ability to enable compression, which can save you not only time, but also money. And we can enable encryption. We have the ability to set various types of encryption depending on your particular requirements. We can use server-side encryption, and we can even integrate with services like the AWS Master Key Service. So if you've got Amazon managing your keys, this backup tool will allow you to integrate with it. So, I think it's kind of interesting. A lot of times when I show people of your technical capability a wizard, they just go, wizards are for wusses. I'm not going to use a wizard, I'm command line. But I go and I audit the solution that was done on command line, not yours, okay? And it sucks, okay? It sucks. So I'm serious, these kind of tools can really help with the complexities of the cloud, making sure that you're understanding security and costing and that kind of stuff. You can also use, reduced redundancy storage if you want to. So let me just turn some of these things off and say next. And then we have a retention policy. And then we can schedule it. So we have a scheduler. Oh, by the way, you can do near real time, which is super cool. Because again, as we move more towards these IoT scenarios, everything is, boy, isn't that the bane of our existence, sort of? It's sort of a two-way coin. Everybody, all the management wants near real time. So the way I look at it as a consultant is big money in my pocket because people are, not implementing it there yet. But if I were still working at an enterprise company, I would probably just be buying extra aspirin because, it's never fast enough, right? Near real time, near real time, near real time. It's just really going to keep going. So then we can have pre and post commands, and then we're going to run the backup. We can have notification. So notification to email address. We can have notification to the event log. And we can generate a detailed report. So we'll go ahead and we'll run that. And you'll be able to see the backup status right inside. And again, this is live backing up to the cloud. Kind of super cool here. And then you got your backup plan available. And you have a history, of course. It was so fast that we hardly even saw it, but there it is. Now, in addition to working with this, what you can do is you can back up to some of your core tools. And being a Windows implementation here, you've got SQL Server and Exchange, and you've got the ability to do cloud to cloud, cloud to local, and make a bootable USB. Now, probably some of you are looking at this and thinking, what's that? Okay, we're going to talk more about that in just a minute, Pardon me? How does it handle open files? I would assume that it will skip them and come back to them, but I have CloudBerry people here who can answer that exactly when I'm done. So, all right. So in terms of Cloud Backup for Windows Desktop, we have scheduled or near real time. We have cloud and local backup. We have block level encryption. We have encryption and compression. We have a command line tool that you can use once you generate the appropriate backup job using the GUI. You don't have to use that. You can use command line. All right. So now what we have is we have a couple of customers with us. And it's great for me as an architect to talk about these best practices and show you these tools. But what we decided to do as a group, CloudBerry and me, was we decided to invite some of their customers up so you could hear the real story at scale and volume that you are interested in. Because it's really nice for me to show you that I can, live real time back up 5 files in a folder. But honestly, if that's all that this product did, you wouldn't be here. You want to understand how it performs at scale. So at this time, I'm going to invite 2 of the customers up on stage. So if you guys want to, walk up here. And then we're going to have a little chat about working with CloudBerry. So come on up, guys. So if you just want to have a seat there. Ellie, if you want to take on the end. And then, yeah, if you want to go right there. Okay, and we've got your slide up. Okay. Okay. So, hello.
Hi. How's it going?
This is Jonathan. So I'm going to have Jonathan introduce himself and talk a little bit about his company, and then we'll talk about Amazon services.
Okay, thanks. My name is Jonathan Kupal. I'm the CTO for a small software development company based in upstate New York called ITX. We, along with our software development, manage the product lifecycle for our customers. So as part of our comprehensive support offering, we manage the production environment and infrastructure for those customers. So as part of that, obviously, giving comfort to our customers, a big part of creating that comfort is a knowledge that their system is backed up and highly available.
Great, fantastic. So first, if you can talk to us about your use of Amazon storage services. So which services do you use, and at what volume do you use them? Okay,
great. Most of our storage services, aside from what we've got committed to EC2 instances, is S3 and Glacier. It's primarily part of our backup lifecycle. And this is actually about a month and a half old now, so we're at about 16 terabytes of data on our S3 environment, and about the same 15 or 16 terabytes worth of data in our Glacier environment. So we actually deployed based on the best practices described here, where we essentially apply a product or a storage lifecycle to the data. What we find is our customers are impatient when they want to do restores, but usually they want to restore recent data, so recent revisions of data that's been backed up in the past. So we retain for a short period of time in S3, and then we shift it or shunt it over to Glacier for long-term storage.
So as a managed backup provider, one of the learnings that you've had in working with your customers is to figure out what is the time window to retain the warm or hot data. Is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah. So have you had to play around with that a little bit? Like maybe start with 30 days, go to 15, go to 45? Has that been something you've adjusted, or have you just looked at costs? How have you figured out what that window is?
Well, if it was my decision, I'd probably chuck everything in Glacier. It's cheap as they come. But what we do is we actually align our backup schedules with our deployment schedules. So we see a regular deployment from our sprints in either a biweekly or a monthly deployment cycle. So for us, it was simple just to have a 30-day cycle to follow that deployment scheme. So after 31 days, tuck it up into Glacier and hope for the best.
Great. So how do you integrate with CloudBerry products? Which products do you use, and what features of CloudBerry products do you use, and how is it, provided value for your customers?
Primarily, we use the CloudBerry Explorer. It's convenient, easy, especially like the IAM Management, and the CloudBerry Backup. We actually operate the CloudBerry Backup as well using, although we're not acting as a reseller, we absorb all of the costs of backup as part of the lifecycle management. We actually adopted their reseller product, which is essentially available because it lets us distinguish our different customers, how much storage they're using, and some of our customers want access to their own servers and have sometimes asked for access to be able to get in and do their own backups or restores on an ad hoc basis. So we're able to create a certain level of freedom for our customers when we operate essentially as that under that reseller interface.
So to be clear, so you have some customers that are accessing the services through reseller and some that you're just giving direct access? Is that what you're doing? Or is it everything through reseller?
Everything's through reseller.
Was that, I'm sorry to interrupt, was that how you originally structured your business, or did that evolve as a market opportunity as you were managing the backups for the customers?
We anticipated that some of our customers would want to manage their own backup and restore. People do whatever they want. So we wanted to be able to create that level of freedom.
Cool. Okay, and then again, which aspects of the CloudBerry Backup tool in particular have you found you've been able to provide value with for your customers?
Can you clarify the question?
So do they use compression, encryption? Do they use,
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, most of it is around reporting and recovery. So as part of our lifecycle management, our third shift actually goes in and checks every single day to make sure all of the backups were successful. And we run a 30-day cycle for patch management for our customers. So along with that cycle, we actually go in and do test restores and report back to them. So being able to do that, especially from a single point of entry console, was really, really super important. Again, it's this concept of creating and seeing that comfort level. It's been great to be able to see, okay, that particular customer's backup didn't run last night. We go in, resolve whatever the issue is with the application or file access or whatever, and we can report back to the customer immediately. Things are backed up again, things are running properly.
And what about managing Glacier retrieval costs? Because again, that's something that comes to as a surprise for some people. Do you use any aspects of the tool, or how do you manage that? Because I get a lot of questions from my enterprise customers. I don't want to be surprised by some large charge. How do I manage this?
You're not going to like my answer. In essence, the customer pays for it. Yeah. If a customer needs that data, yeah, they're going to pay whatever it takes to get that data back out of Glacier. And to be frank, if it's a disastrously high cost, right, it's probably going to be covered under their own insurance policies. Right. So it's a little bit flip of a response, but that's kind of where it is. We're not routinely restoring from that environment.
I was just wondering, because CloudBerry has a feature that I didn't show you guys that allows throttling on the Glacier Restore, which I know some customers use, and I guess you're not really using that, but it allows you only restore a certain amount at a time to keep the charges really low if you want the data back kind of slowly. Sounds like your customers don't really need that.
They don't like to wait.
Great, fantastic. Well, lessons learned. People here are new to or wanting to learn more about storage lifecycle management. You're in the business. What are a couple things you learned along the way that would benefit this crowd?
The first one is kind of obvious. It's software. You still have to, sometimes it fails, so you have to be on top of monitoring the status of those backups. I mean, to be completely frank, and Ellie will probably say this too, if CloudBerry says it was backed up, it's backed up. And once you've got it into that S3 environment or in that Glacier environment, it's there. But you've got to stay on top of it every day. You do not want to be testing your backups when you have to do your first emergency restore. That's a foolish way to approach it. So for us, we're always all about trusting but verifying, and we do that on a routine as part of our daily task, as opposed to having it be a requested thing from our customer. So you never want your customers to come and ask you to do the test. You want to be going to your customers and say, hey guys, by the way, along with our patch management, we're also routinely testing our restores, and here's the status of our last 6 test restores. That's a great experience for your customer to be able to have, is to know that you're thinking about it so that they don't have to anymore.
Well, fantastic. Well, great. Well, thanks. Well, I'm going to now switch to the next slide, and if you want to pass the microphone over to Eli, and if you want to just introduce yourself while I'm switching this.
Hello, I'm Ellie Webster. I'm the CEO of Creative Technology Solutions. We do IT support for the healthcare market in the Chicago, Midwest region, and really across the United States. We're a full-service IT support vendor, so anything from a workstation not working to deploying servers, and whether it's in the cloud or on-prem, whether it's Exchange, SQL, whatever it may be, we do the full scope of support.
Great. So talk to the crowd a little bit about how you use Amazon storage services, which services you use and which you don't, because you don't.
Sure.
I don't see everything on that slide.
Okay, sure. Well, we are primarily using Amazon S3. That's the main product that we're using. We used to use EC2. We're not using it as much anymore. We're still using it a little bit, but looking forward to using it again in the future. We're using the CloudBerry tool for backing up our customers' data to Amazon S3, but really S3 is really the only thing we use. Glacier is not something that we're using right now because the customers that we have, if there ever is a need for a restore, it would be an immediate restore. It wouldn't be something that they would want to wait for.
Great, and talk to us about your data volume. You got a pretty big volume going through the products as well.
Yeah, so I see on the slide it says 11 terabytes. I think last time I checked was a couple days ago. We were at 15 terabytes and growing, so similar to what Jonathan was using. It keeps going, and the advantage of using Amazon, as I'm sure everyone here knows, is that it's relatively cheap. So it's good knowing that my bill from Amazon is not tremendously large every month, and we're able to store that much data in the cloud. Actually, I'm kind of surprised at how much data we're actually storing there.
And of course, you're using encryption. So are you using a specialty type of encryption, or are you using one of the encryption types that is available through the CloudBerry tool?
Directly through the CloudBerry tool.
Okay, cool. Cool. Well, one thing, I told you guys that I was going to talk about something near the end around bare metal, and I kind of want to talk with you about it, because when we were talking and preparing, it's pretty exciting. You saw in the CloudBerry Backup tool, you've got the bare metal button, and you can back up from the bare metal, but what is really exciting, and I'm announcing it for CloudBerry to the audience here for the first time, is CloudBerry has now the feature of restoring that backup onto EC2. And so that's a brand new feature, and I'm really, really excited about it, and so are you. So why don't you talk about how you're going to use this new feature that's available, I think, today? I think today.
Sure.
Yeah, I think today.
Sure. So a couple of things that I just love about CloudBerry that I just want to mention is, first of all, the fact that there's constant updates. I mean, like, they're releasing today 4.5. I think I checked a week ago and it was 4.2. So there's constantly new updates and different things happening, which is really great. The support is phenomenal. You put in a support ticket. I was talking to Jonathan earlier this morning about an issue I was saying. He was like, oh, you submit a support ticket. And that's something that we do all the time because it's just so easy and they're so good. They're quick to respond. It's just really, really phenomenal support. Also, the single pane of glass, the fact that I can see all my customers' data, all my customers, every backup that's going on. I can see it from one reseller portal. That's really, really cool. But this new feature, bare metal support, was released a couple of weeks ago, which we're still testing, and everything seems to be amazing. The fact that we can restore to an EC2 instance is really something that will take us to the next level, because we've got many times we're decommissioning a server. We do one remaining one final backup, a full image backup we'll do, and then a week or two later, whatever it is, the customer will come and say, oh, we had a program on there that we needed, or we didn't realize, or there was some data that they told us they didn't need, and it turns out they do need. To be able to restore that directly to EC2 and immediately, I assume within a couple hours, be able to get in to that server and use it as a fully functioning server and get that data will really be a phenomenal feature for our customers.
I know,
to use.
I'm super excited about it too. So, okay, so lessons learned from your aspect. You're in the storage business, you're using the tools. What have you learned over time that you can share with the audience?
Well, some of the things that you mentioned, using the IAM, for credential management, testing restores is definitely very, very important. I'm sure we all have some failures that we can share. I can share that we've certainly tried to do restores before that didn't quite work out the way we had planned. Thank God at the end we were able to do it, but it's definitely very important. Maybe take a note from Jonathan, who says every 30 days they do a test restore. That's a great idea to do, just to make sure that that your restores are working, that you're able to get the data, whatever it is. There's a lot of times things don't go exactly the way you plan it, but honestly, just our customers, some of them actually tell us that, oh, backup, we don't really need backup, it's not that important, and I really push them to say, like, there's no way that you can't do backup. There's always going to be a file that you need, there's always going to be something, and like I said before, thankfully the cost is relatively inexpensive, and certainly the cost of the software itself is a really great value compared to some of the other enterprise products that we've looked into. So CloudBerry was just made sense for us to go with.
Great, well, fantastic.